don't need a fucking weight. I do. I did weight before. Good morning, everyone. Let's sit quiet for a few minutes. Excuse me, a few people to join, and then we'll get started. Okay? I'll go get some water. Okay, so some people will join as we get started. So good morning, everyone, again. Some of you, good evening. My friends and our friends in Europe, United Kingdom. Thank you for joining together today at this time of year. So what I generally do in a satsang like this is begin with a little guided meditation, and then I'll give some teachings, some pointers, and then we'll have plenty of time for, excuse me, dialogue, discussion, question and answer. And if possible, could you please settle and not move around once we get started as much as possible? That would help everyone else be present and focused. Um, Also preferably have your video on so we can see you. That's always nice. Not necessary, but it always gives a feeling of fullness, like we're all here together in this shared space, exploring together. So as much as possible, be present in every way for the benefit of yourself as well as for others. That would be great. So let's begin with a little brief guided meditation. Okay. So let yourself settle. And you can allow your awareness, which tends to flit around, right, from past to future and back again, to settle into the now, into what's happening right now. And for a few minutes, just simply be open to what is. Be with what is. That's the basic meditation in the direct approach that I teach and others teach. Just to be with, be open to what is. Huh? Let's begin there. You're not manipulating your attention. You're not trying to achieve some special state of bliss or centeredness or contentment or whatever else you have in mind on the agenda. Just let it be as it is. And as you let go of the doing, of course, let go of the constant efforting to get things to be different. This may bring to the foreground the ways your mind won't let go and let things be. Huh? Just makes it more apparent, which is fine. Just see that the way it is and come back to just letting things be. this is the nature of this is our natural state, awake awareness, which does not argue with, resist, try to get to be different the way things are. Simply open to what is. You don't have to fabricate this state. It's our inherent awakeness. Of course, there are many ways of entering into, many doorways into this natural state, to resting in our natural state, which we explore in the school. The way I'm inviting you this time is very direct. Just the most direct is simply to go there, but there are more indirect ways of discovering and resting in our natural state. And then, for the sake of today, I'd like to invite you to do another exploration here, which is to let your awareness drop into your heart space, your heart center. And connect with that place inside where there's a spark, where there's a glow. Of love, gratitude, appreciation, whatever word you put with that. Let yourself rest there and connect with that. You may feel love for particular beings. You may feel love for all beings. You just may simply feel a warmth and a gratitude and appreciation, whatever that is. Just feel it and let it grow in your awareness. And let it expand. And radiate out beyond the body in all directions, to all beings, to all things, like a radiance, like a glow, light expanding in every direction. As it expands, you realize that it doesn't originate with you, that it originates everywhere, all the time, from all things. The radiance, the light of what is in your heart, in all beings. If you feel ready, you can let go of any boundary, any separation, and dissolve into this light. The light that permeates all manifestation, the light of consciousness. of the meditation as such, but of course you can allow this exercise, this meditation to affect how you see reality and yourself and life as you go forward. So I'll talk a little about this theme. You know, we just use these themes as jumping off points for talking about the same thing over and over again. But I think finding the light inside the dark is, it's very resonant. It draws on two archetypal energies, light and dark, of course. And, you know, it could easily be the topic of a whole retreat or a class. You know, we can go very deep with this exploration. And it felt particularly appropriate for this time of year, of course, because, you know, this is the time of year in the cycle of the seasons when the light is dying, waning, right? Coming down to the solstice when there's the minimum of light, at least in the northern hemisphere. And so it's a time when holidays arose to celebrate the light inside the dark, right? As I wrote in my little description, you know, the Jesus, the Christ child, as the light of the world, born in the midst of the darkness around the solstice, the light of the lamp in the temple that burned for 8 days instead of one, and signified divine inspiration for a battle, as it turned out. I read in the New York Times, interesting article about Hanukkah. What they were defending, the Jews at that time, was their view of life as essentially spiritual against the materialism of the Hellenistic, the Greek world. So interesting that it was not only a battle, but a spiritual battle that was commemorated. And then, of course, the Buddha's enlightenment, which in Japan and the East Asia at least, is celebrated on December 8th. So light and dark, they can be understood at a number of different levels, and I'll talk about that a little. Clearly at the spiritual level, in terms of our own path, our own journey, our own unfolding, we often feel ourselves beset by darkness, right? And in our world right now, I think there's great concern that we are beset by darkness in the form of ignorance, of hatred, of delusion, of fixed points of view, rigid points of view. And has it always been so in history? Probably. But it can feel especially pressing right now because we also have, you know, a threat to our existence on the planet, right? So I think, you know, in terms of environmental degradation and potential environmental collapse. So these are real concerns, right? You know, we can go to spirituality and emphasize the absolute, which is beyond all concerns about the manifest level, and find refuge there. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, every spiritual teaching, every spiritual path has to include the human as well as the transcendent, the individual as well as the universal. And more in my teaching, I feel called on to do that, you know. I think in my early teaching, in my early practice, you know, I was going for the absolute, and that was great. And discovering the absolute and being inspired and imbued with the absolute was really crucial, and I highly recommend it. But at the same time, we need to also live in this world, right? And live with other people and live in a civic society in which we have concerns about one another, right, in the future of our planet. So without making those into a burden that we carry around, they touch our hearts, right? They concern us in a very deep level. And so it's the heart, which I invited you to consider, which is where the light resides and emanates from in each of us, right? So we're touched by world events, world affairs, not only in the big world around us, but the people in our lives and people close to us. This touches us and keeps inviting us back to discover the light within the dark, right? I hope you don't mind. It looks like my mouth is moving and my words are coming out later, but I hope you don't mind that, if that's what you're seeing. Sometimes happens. So at that level, finding the light inside the dark, which becomes really poignant to this time of year, refers to how do we find the light of awakening, the light of love and compassion, wisdom and compassion as well, in our own hearts when we're beset by all the darkness that we carry with us. In Zen, it is said in one of the chants they do, all my ancient twisted karma carried by me since of old on account of beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance. Now I fully disavow, or I fully acknowledge and release, you know, it's a kind of a chant, yeah? So to recognize the darkness that we carry with us, huh? The unconsciousness, right? The anger, the rage, the hatred, the fear that may be the result of childhood conditioning, or maybe something that we carry along with us from past lives, or you know, family history, wherever we think this impersonal darkness comes from. Because ultimately, the contents of our psyche is not personal. It doesn't belong to you, to who you really are. I like to call it our karmic bundle. We all come in with a karmic bundle. It's like when you're born, someone says, here, this is your karmic bundle in this lifetime. Take it. This is what you got to work with. And then the bundle is amplified over the course of your childhood and adult life. More things are added to your bundle until that bundle can seem very heavy unless you're doing something to lighten, there's that word again, to lighten the bundle, to release yourself from the burden of the bundle, right? To find the light in the midst of the dark that you feel like you're carrying with you. So for each of us, this is the awakening journey, finding the light of awareness, the light of our inherent radiance and fullness in the depths of our own being, in the depths of our own heart, right? That's why it's called enlightenment, huh? To awaken to the light. And ultimately, to realize that the light is what I am. And not only what I am, but what everything is. The light of consciousness is what expresses itself through all things. It's the essence of all things, huh? So even though there is apparent darkness, it's all ultimately made of light. So in that way, you could say the light is an illusion. That's why it's non-dual. See, from the dualistic traditions, right, there's the struggle between light and dark, right? Good and evil, right and wrong, right? Archetypal struggle, and you never know who's going to win, right? And you gotta be on the side of light in order to make sure that it prevails, right? So from the non-dual tradition, the tradition that I'm teaching from, light is the essence and the fundamental substance and nature of what is, okay? It's only through ignorance that we fail to see that. So ignorance is like a superimposition. Darkness is at this level of darkness. We'll talk more about other understandings of darkness, but this level, darkness is like something that's superimposed on the light, you know, which is fine, you know. I'm not saying there shouldn't be darkness. Darkness is. It's part of the way light expresses itself as darkness, right? But awakening is to see that at the essence, everything is light, right? And even though they're on the relative level, there's light and dark, fundamentally, everything is light, is consciousness. Yeah. That's the recognition of awakening or enlightenment. Right? Again, not to say that the archetypal play of light and dark is and good and evil and whatever archetypal opposites we are aware of. Not to say that, again, at the relative level, this isn't important. And I think the play of those opposites is what creates the manifest world, right? So fundamentally non-dual, at the relative level, dualistic, light and dark, right? So duality at the relative level is fundamentally non-dual. We can't pretend like there's non-duality playing out in the world. There's plenty of duality, but fundamentally it's all the play of the one. So that's the paradox. Spiritual path, the spiritual teachings are full of paradox, right? So both, not either or, both dual and non-dual. Fundamentally non-dual at the relative manifest level, constantly paradoxical and dual, right? And I think this play of the opposites is what spurs us onward to seek. Because if everything seemed like it was light, then there'd be nothing to seek, right? So we seem to be beset by darkness. We're constantly dealing with our own ignorance, which causes us, you see, at the fundamental, universal, absolute level, suffering doesn't exist, you could say. But at a relative level, tell that to someone who's dying of starvation, or whose partner just left them, or who's just got a terminal diagnosis, right? You can say, yeah, it's all just the play of the light, the play of consciousness. But yeah, that may be true. But wow, this hurts. This is painful, right? We can't deny that, right? We have to acknowledge that too. And in our own lives, that suffering, as a result of the play of the opposites, is what spurs us on to discover the one at the heart of the two, So that at that level, play of light and dark is essential. It's innate, inherent. We can't avoid it, right? So at this level, darkness is created by the mind. There is no, there's darkness and light playing out there, but ultimately it's all It's all light, as I said, fundamentally, essentially. So what keeps us from seeing the light? It's the darkness that is the filter through which we see, right? So that's another way, which I've already been talking about, of understanding the darkness that we discover the light in the midst of, yeah? I think it was Saint Paul, wasn't it, who said, I used to see things through a glass darkly, and now I see them face to face, right? The dark glass, right? How do we see through that, right? So that's the journey. How do we work with our own obscurations? This is where it gets very practical, where the rubber hits the road. How do I work with the darkness in my own mind? The fixed points of view, the belief system, the fundamentalism. We talk about fundamentalism out there, but what about our own fundamentalism, right? Our deeply held beliefs that don't allow any variation, don't allow other people to be the way they are, right? We can be fundamentalists about non-dualism. I think there's a lot of non-dual fundamentalism going around these days. Yeah, so anything can turn into a kind of darkness. It can be turned into a kind of obscuration, a kind of dark, smoky, obscure filter through which we see reality. Right. So how do we work to penetrate through our own darkness, so that we can recognize that ultimately it's about the light in here, seeing the light out there, the emptiness in here, seeing the emptiness out there, the love in here, seeing the love out there, so-called out there, right? No separation. So. And then at the even deeper level, we can understand that there is a darkness. Not only is there a light that goes beyond light and dark, dualities of light and dark, and imbues, infuses, animates, makes possible the play of light and dark. But there's also a darkness that is beyond light and dark, right? It's the unmanifest, the mystery, right? The fertile void, it's sometimes called, right? Source. We talk about it in the Tao Te Ching, right? The dark, the feminine, the yin, right? The deepest place, out of which, and again, not feminine versus masculine, but a deep dark, out of which is all potential, but no manifestation. It has no form. It's the mystery out of which manifestation arises, right? And when we sit and drop into the silence, into the stillness, we may touch into, perhaps, just a flavor of that darkness, that fertile void, right? Which can never be known, never be touched, does not express itself as light. It's simply all possibility. Right? So we can dissolve into that, we can surrender into that, but we can never know it as an object. Right? So in terms of our own journey, our own practice, it is to embrace light and dark, as they are, right? And the manifest world, the relative expression, is to let it be the way it is. We're not struggling against the darkness and advocating for the light in that way, right? At some deep level, there's a deep surrender to the fact that there's a Donald Trump in the world, right? You know, there are climate change deniers in the world. There's hatred and so-called evil and violence in the world. And again, at the relative level, that touches us deeply, but at some deeper level, there's a surrender to the way it is, because I don't know. I don't know how it's supposed to be. I can't really know. And I can't make it be different from the way it is, except in the ways that I can, but ultimately it's beyond my control. So there's a deep surrender, and at the same time, there's an aspiration toward the light, toward love. You know, again, paradoxical, surrendering to the way it is, and the fact is, experientially, the more we surrender to the way it is, the more we naturally allow the arising of love and light. When we're at war with what is, there's no room for this light to arise in our own hearts, in our own minds. So surrender makes possible, surrender to the way it is, light and dark, makes possible the arising of the light. Right? Paradoxical, again, the paradox of that. So we both surrender to the way it is, and we wish all beings to be happy and peaceful and free from suffering simultaneously, right? Paradoxically, okay? So that's a kind of little talk. We could go on really endlessly with this, and in the School for Awakening, we explore this and many other topics at great length. This is just intended to be a little chat, and also an opportunity to explore together. This is how the school works too. We usually give a talk, 25 minutes or so, then we dialogue, those of you who are possibly interested in the school. And, then we dialogue for a while, then we might give a little more talk. And we go on like that. So, so that's just a flavor of this topic, a very profound topic. And I invite you now to share any insights you might have, ask any questions you might have. You can raise your hand. That's the way I've been doing it, just simply raising your hand. I think there's also somewhere a button where you can actually press a button that says raising hands, but you can do that too. Either way, I'll see you. So let's just open it up. Of course, I see some familiar faces, as well as quite a few new faces. So let me know what we should continue to talk about, or anything. It doesn't have to be on this topic, although it'd be fun to explore this some more together. But anything on the broader issue of awakening and the non-dual nature of reality, let's explore that together. Okay. Okay, anyone? It's your opportunity. Yes, Nicole. You can unmute yourself by pressing the button there. There's an unmute button. Do you see it? If not, I can do it for you. Let me see. You got it. You got it. Great.
Okay. Hi. I'm wondering about conceptual frameworks, whether it's important to have. I'm not really anything, like I'm not a Buddhist, I'm not a Hindu, I mean, strictly speaking. And I'm wondering, I'm interested in sharing at some point like what I've realized or what I'm going through, and wondering if it's important to have a firm conceptual framework to wake it up in. Like okay. I'd like your input on that because
Of course.
I just get confused because the Buddhist thing, about non-self, and then the Hindu thing about, and the Hindu thing about the self, gets confusing to me. Like how to express it to someone,
Right.
In myself, like it doesn't really matter so much, right? But
Right.
I'm thinking in the future, if I want to express this to someone, like, do I need to have that down, the conceptual framework?
Sure.
Like, just know what you think of it.
Sure, I understand. Well, when you wake up out of a conceptual framework, you don't wake up in
Yeah,
a conceptual framework, right?
I
So,
understand. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Well,
that's what I'm experiencing, Yeah.
well, you asked me the question whether you need a conceptual framework. So, what I'm
Well, I know, but as far as expressing it, like as a teaching, is there a self, is there a non-self, or does it matter? Like,
well, what's your experience?
well, it
Speak
doesn't
from.
really matter, but
Well, I again,
sorry.
if you want to express your understanding, then let the words come from your understanding. In other words,
Yeah, I guess I get hung up, about well, what am I? As far as, because most of the teachers I've been to are either Buddhists or Hindus or something, and I don't really feel like I'm anything as far as,
and you want
some belief
want me to-
system. I don't.
Okay. So, I think that's just fine. In other words, what I'm saying is you don't need to wake up into a conceptual framework, and you don't need a conceptual framework to express your understanding. That's my answer. Okay. Whether teachers say they're a Hindu or a Buddhist is not important for you.
I just feel like this freedom, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are quite a few teachers who don't take on a conceptual framework or label themselves. So I'm not sure who you have been seeing or listening to, but I know quite a few teachers who don't consider themselves either Buddhists or Hindus. So
Well, I had this. Yeah.
Okay.
My main teacher has been, I never met him, but Jean Klein has been, just through his books, but I've done a lot of work before. And then Francis Lucille.
Francis Lucille. And Francis doesn't call himself anything, does he?
Well, no, except that his framework is largely still Hindu, or, Advaita is more or less
First of all,
framework, I guess.
First of all, Advaita is not really Hindu. It comes out of the Hindu tradition.
I know.
Oh, then why did you say? I'm getting a little confused because you're saying certain things and then you're.
I know. Well, no, because there's still reference to the Atman and Brahman and the self. Jean Klein even made reference. Not. I know that it's not too literal or anything, but there's still references. The framework is still there. Sorry.
Okay. Jean Klein did not call himself.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Jean Klein did not call himself.
You're breaking.
Am I breaking up? Everyone having trouble with me? No. So it's at your end?
You're breaking up. No, okay. It's my computer.
It's your computer. Yeah, okay. So anyway,
Probably.
Jean Klein did not go around calling himself a Hindu, and he certainly didn't call himself, and he didn't use the word Advaita, except maybe on, his book jacket. He he talked about what he called the direct approach, which is the way he described it. That was his term for it, which again is not a part of Hinduism or Buddhism. And so Jean was, of course, my teacher for 10 years and was not did not label himself in that way. Aja Shanti, who was a teacher of mine and was the one who asked me to teach, does not call himself a Buddhist or a Hindu or anything, or Advaita or anything like that. The same with other teachers who I respect, like Byra and others. So, I don't think that's necessary or even helpful to identify with the tradition. I think there's some beautiful teachers who are arising who don't identify with the tradition. And of course, the Buddha didn't identify as a Buddhist. So speak from your experience directly, and words will come, and that will be wonderful. And hopefully there'll be clear words that will convey what you're trying to say. And you'll find that out as you go, and you'll modify your words accordingly. It's okay?
Right. Thank you.
Very good, Nicole. Thank you. Yeah, because again, we wake up out of a tradition, we wake up out of a conceptual framework, and then we take on words and concepts, like light and dark. I mean, we're just playing with concepts, right? They're just pointers. They're all just pointers back to our true nature. And some pointers are helpful and some aren't. And we discover that as we go along, If they're helping people wake up, then they're good pointers. If they're not, then they're very good pointers. Then otherwise, what value do they have, right? And unfortunately, as you're suggesting, in a lot of traditions, the pointers turn into reified concepts that then get freighted with centuries worth of meaning and lose their vitality. So we need to break through those conceptual frameworks on a regular basis and speak from the heart, from the truth, right? So I think in that sense we agree, right? Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can unmute yourself if you want, or mute yourself if you want. That would be great. Or I can do that if you want. Let me see. You got it. Very good. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. Someone else. How about you, Jim, down there in Todos Santos? You got something to say?
Thank you. It's good to see you, Stephen.
Good to see you.
All is well, and enjoying this. The context of actually exploring one's feelings towards, say, the political situation, or a despot, or a situation which is causing, which is troubling, whatever, oneself as well as friends and large segments of population. Just working on just seeing that simply as just the way it is. Would just like to hear some of your comments on that. Just simply observing, I guess, is what we.
I think observing and also not polarizing, into different points of view. In other words, we could make Donald Trump into the personification of evil, for example, and see ourselves as good and he as evil, and create a world of dark and light in that way. Create a kind of dualism there. To see that, that Donald Trump is an expression of what we all have, an ignorance, an inability to empathize, a lack of compassion, a lack of understanding, that, there but for the grace of God, you could say, or that this is just an expression of what is potential inside of me, and as a reminder to stay awake ourselves, how am I acting like Donald Trump, in my life, in the small ways that I do, as a reminder to me, in other words, to take it as a spiritual opportunity rather than getting caught in, the right and the wrong, the dark and the light, which creates more anger and fear, right? So to find the light in the midst of the relative darkness, is what I've been talking about,
And an opportunity perhaps to find compassion.
That's right, to find compassion, to even try to understand, to see that, yes, what creates that kind of vortex of negativity and darkness, at the same time feel motivated by that to pursue our own clarity and compassion and awakening. It's an opportunity, but as you say, yes, ultimately it is the way it is. If we allow it to cause us intense suffering and add to our own burden, then we're not going to be of benefit to anyone, certainly not to ourselves. So it's that fine dance, again, we allow it in, we can feel the suffering, we feel moved to wake up, to be of benefit. And at the same time, we let it go. We don't hold on to it. We don't get fixed in our own position, wherever that may be. Any fixed position, dark or light, is simply a position. It's a narrowing of awareness, of consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Great. Thank you for that. Anything more, Jim?
I'm good. Thank you.
You're good. Thank you. Yeah. Great. Yes. Helen. Hi.
Did I unmute?
You did.
I was just wondering, I just kind of want to clarify some things. I had an experience. I've been meditating for about 10 years. And
What kind of meditation?
well, Vipassana, Theravada, but also some Tibet, Vajrayana too, with Mingyur Rinpoche.
Mingyur Rinpoche. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And after a day long, I felt there was a shift in perspective, that I could rest back and there was more stillness, and that I felt more that I was more the stillness than I was the conceptualization. And it's not really left me. I mean, I still have moments where I get upset, for like 2 hours at a time, where I feel I can't rest back into that stillness. But okay, I see that when I do get caught up, I have to find that space again, that stillness space. Is that samadhi that
No,
I wonder. No, yeah.
I wouldn't call it samadhi. Samadhi, of course, is a technical term from the Buddhist and Hindu tradition, but samadhi is a state. It's a certain state that you go into using certain meditative techniques and that you stay in for a while and then you come out of. That's what samadhi generally refers to. I think what you dropped into was the kind of the stillness and the silence that is inherently present all the time. So it's not a samadhi, it's actually the opposite. You're dropping into your natural state, So I would say, yes, you don't have to make that happen, but you can return to it, from time to time. Every now and then, you can just stop and drop into the stillness.
I listen to sounds, or I watch my breath to kind of get back to the stillness. Does that sound?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Because
But
sounds are pointers to the still silence, right?
uh-huh.
Isn't that how it works, right? You listen to the sounds in order to remind you of the silence that's always present in the midst of the sound, right? That which is hearing, in a sense, which is silent. Silence is what makes noise possible or sound possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are the sound, the silence that allows sound to happen, the
So that would be more the
background.
absolute, kind of like that would be more the absolute, and then
You could say, yeah.
and then
Dropping-
there's kind of dance because I don't stay there. I might stay there for a few seconds, and then conceptualization comes up, and then
Right.
that gets
Keep coming back. Just keep dropping back in. Little by
okay.
little, it becomes
Yeah.
more and more accustomed, more and more comfortable, and more it starts to pervade your everyday life. You see.
I feel like this is like a miracle.
Yeah.
Just the whole shift, even though it could probably develop a lot more, as you're saying. I'm just happy with what I have.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. It's a little awakening. It's the beginning of the awakening, and so just keep coming back to that, and gradually it starts to grow. What you tend and take care of, like a plant, will grow more and more, right? So just keep coming back to it, giving it energy. Simply giving it awareness will allow it to become stronger in your life. And notice
And
also that this silence is also aware. Right?
yes,
It's
yes.
an aware silence. It's not a dead silence. It's aware. It's alive. It's present. Right?
Mm-hmm. And I see that the stillness, what I used to do, running after things in the world here and there, keeping busy, planning nice vacations, having a nice meal, they don't compare to just stopping.
Yes.
That's where the happiness lies.
There you go. There you go. The ultimate vacation. In each moment, right?
Yeah.
Who needs to go off anywhere when you can have a vacation in each moment, right?
I feel that way.
No, that's beautiful. Absolutely.
Thank
And then meditation it's not a chore anymore or something you need to do. It becomes your greatest joy.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to. And something you lapse back into just naturally.
Beginning to, I want to find the breath, or I want to find the sound, just so I can relax back in.
Beautiful. So that's great.
Thank you for letting me talk about it, because I don't really have anyone to talk to about it.
Yeah, beautiful, Helen. Well,
Thank you.
enjoy.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, and we all have that available to us in each moment, right? Once we've recognized it. The stillness, the silence, which is aware and present, and is ultimately, as Helen suggests, the ultimate source of happiness, fulfillment, refreshment, nurturing.
Hello, Stephen.
Yes, who's this?
Hi, Stephen. It's Irene. I'm on the phone.
Oh, yes, Irene. Hi there.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much for this this time and this satsang. And what I'd like to ask you about or check in about is there was a few things that resonated, and I just want to explore this with you for a moment.
Of course.
Thank you. Well, you use the term disavow, disavow from our beliefs and conditioning, etc.
Disavow.
Oh, disavow, is that what you say?
Yeah, disavow means to. Yeah, it's a term from the Zen chant that I mentioned. I don't generally use the term disavow, but it makes sense.
No, it's good. It does. No, I definitely resonated for me. So what I wanted to explore is, I'm making this big move, as you know, or I don't know if it's a big move, but it is definitely, I think, bringing up some things for me as I let go of, and move on in certain ways. And I'm noticing. So in other words, it feels good. You know, it feels like I'm moving in the right direction towards more light, so to speak, more happiness. What I notice as I'm moving, and this is what I guess I want to shine a little bit of light on.
It's nice that you bring up
Pardon?
happiness. It's nice that you bring up happiness in terms of light, because, you know, I didn't mention happiness, but you know, my sort of my little motto or mantra that I've used on my website for years is, or at least I use it on my email, is happiness is our natural state, right? And so
Right.
as light comes to pervade our lives more and more, happiness is the result, right? So I'm just making that link between light and happiness. I mean, happiness is when we're imbued with light, is when we're, you know, a light being, right? So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's totally welcome. So what I am noticing and is it seems like as I move in this, you know, direction, I have it's kind of a recurring thing. I keep moving, but I feel like I get a little stuck sometimes. Like I have this, I would call it almost a gatekeeper. You know,
Right.
it's like, you know,
Only allow so much happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, and I'm wondering, you know, is it? I guess yeah. So I'm wanting to get a little. I don't know if you have anything to say about that. I don't know if it's a resistance to the light or the happiness
Absolutely.
or what I'm.
Well, yeah, it's a resistance to the light. You know, I don't want too much light. You know, darkness. This is the darkness of the obscuration that we were talking about, the inner obscuration. A strong belief, you know, which you and I have talked about some, about it's not okay to be happy. You don't have a right to be happy.
Okay.
You know, so it's a belief, which is a commitment to suffering, a commitment to darkness. I don't want too
Oh
much
my
light.
gosh.
It's not okay. It's not allowed. You know, and I think, you know, many of us have that. You know, one of my therapy teachers called it the upper limits problem. You know,
Yeah.
you know, there's an upper limit to how much happiness we can have, you know, and we only allow ourselves so much. And at a certain point, we cap it off because we hit our limit, you know, and that's a strong belief, you know, and some of these beliefs are very strong and very rigid and have a very strong hold over us at a very primal level, you know, visceral level, you know.
Yes.
They just won't let us expand. They won't let us open. They keep us closed, right? So this is our work, and our commitment to the light is to work with those places that resist the light, you know, that won't allow the light to fully manifest, right? The forces of dark. There are forces of darkness, you know, whether we call them evil or not. Sure. Of course, there are forces of darkness, generational forces, historical forces, individual forces. I mean, as a psychotherapist, you know, I'm very aware of the forces of darkness. You know, I can't be an airy-fairy spiritual teacher, guys, because, you know, I work with people, you know, on some of the deepest, you know, personal, psychological, existential problems. So absolutely, there are powerful forces of darkness in our psyche and in our world, which is just the collective psyche, after all. So yeah, absolutely. So being committed to the light, we need to work with the darkness, but we can to polarize and make the darkness our enemy, because the more we fight against the darkness, the more the darkness, you know, I don't want to make the darkness seem like it's a real entity here, but there are forces of darkness. The more we fight against it, the stronger it becomes. What we resist persists, right?
Yeah.
So how to make friends with the darkness, how to embrace the darkness, how to welcome the darkness, with the ultimate ulterior motive of releasing its hold over us, right? That's the paradox. We welcome it and invite it, make friends with it, with the ultimate aim, of course, of releasing its hold over us. We can't deny that.
Right. Okay. Okay. So
It's in that broader
that
space. We're welcoming it in that broader space of awareness, awake awareness, that welcomes everything as it is. And as we welcome everything into this broader space, we become more and more this broader space, which is light. You see? Again, that's the paradox. The more we welcome the darkness, the more we are the light.
Right. Right. Yes. 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 Yes.
And yeah.
Okay. I understand. Oh. Okay. So that's Then that's a way. That's kind of the way to be with it or work with it or whatever
Is to welcome it. Don't
Yes.
go to war with it. You know, there's a bigger space of awareness, which is what you are fundamentally, which welcomes the darkness, welcomes the resistance as it is. Be that as much as you can.
Okay. Okay. That's actually very helpful. I think I was that's very helpful. It even softened a bit. You know, I think I have been really pushing against it, or wanting.
That's right. That's
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
Question. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Oh, okay, great. Someone else want to share or ask? Don't be shy, and it doesn't have to be about light and dark again.
Hi, this is Jane. Hi, Stephen. I've never actually met you. I just wanted to really thank you for making this opportunity. I've been around you since the 90s. I've known, I had an office next to you actually at one point.
Oh, where was that? Where was that, Jane?
San Rafael. It was just a long time ago.
Oh, wow. How lovely.
I love this because in some ways I'm on a kind of forced retreat for a long time because I'm electrically sensitive. So this kind of Zoom satsang for me is a real treat.
Oh, good.
To be with others, you know, to be, and to enter into the energy. It was just, I just turned it on and I could feel it. It's just amazing. Thank you all.
Beautiful. Thank you.
For providing it. It's so gorgeous here. I live way out in the country near Grass Valley now, although I did live in Marin for a long time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you.
I had to escape the EMFs, and it's quite an interesting path.
Yeah.
To be in that kind of understanding about the dark, about what's causing this kind of interference with our spiritual nature, and being with it.
Yes, absolutely.
Being alone.
Yes.
And being in joy. Through that darkness, have the joy.
There you go.
Spill through me. It just spills.
That's another way to understand finding the light in the darkness, inside the dark, is to find the joy in the midst of the suffering.
Absolutely, and more. Yeah.
To be able to connect directly, and of course, waking up is what allows us to do that. It's the most effective way to do that, but to be able to find joy in the midst of struggle, suffering, difficulty, challenges, to immediately have that joy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the gift. I can feel it coming in.
Yeah.
It's just like and so wonderful to be with you, and that, you know, to share that, just to
Beautiful.
share the immense joy that can be in the seeing the truth of what's going on,
Yes.
the deep, dark truth, the really blow your mind truth. It's horrendous. Isn't it great? I mean,
That's the paradox, isn't it? Isn't that great? Yeah. I love it.
me too. And to share that with everyone,
Mhm.
that's a gift.
That's great. Thank you, Jane. I love it. It's horrendous. Isn't that great? I like it. Yeah. Yeah,
Brings
thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's light in the midst of the dark. Isn't it? It's horrendous, isn't it? Yeah. Terry, you gotta unmute yourself there. There
Okay,
you
can
go.
you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Stephen. How are you? I'm new, and I'm really enjoying listening to everybody, and of course yourself as well. I have a question, and it may or may not be something you want to answer. But have you read the book Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind?
I just read it actually.
So I'm halfway through it, and I wondered what your opinions were. I've been a speaker for decades, worked with Adyashanti and meditation for a long time, and I feel like I am a blocked speaker. And I was just curious what your opinion was on what he writes about in the book. Is maybe a way to tap into something that somebody isn't tapping into.
Believe it or not, I have recommended to several people that they take psilocybin, and I think going on a psilocybin journey with an appropriate guide could definitely be a good thing. You know, I would not make a habit of it, but I had the good fortune when I was in my 20s to was I 20 already? Yeah, I think I was 21, to have a few journeys, psychedelic journeys, which definitely opened me up to the possibility of spiritual realization. Then I had a bad trip, which ended my psychedelic experimentation. Bad trip meaning I thought I was dying, and wandered around New York City thinking I was having a heart attack, which is not recommended, and ended up going to the hospital and and getting shot up with tranquilizers. So that was the end of spiritual experimentation. Of course, I had no idea what I was taking at that point. And I only took about 5 or 6 journeys. But so there are downsides, especially if you don't know what you're taking. And even with psilocybin, there are occasionally negative trips, very rare. But I think there's the possibility with something like psilocybin, which is, of course, an extract of a mushroom. Some of you may know it's an extract. I think now it's synthesized, but it's a chemical found in certain mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, that are psychedelic, right? And there's been a lot of experimentation. This book chronicles some of the experimentation, particularly with people who are dying, and how it helps them die with joy and surrender. And other ways in which it's now becoming researched again, more and more, and to find the benefits of it. So I think a single journey with a seasoned practitioner can, and often does, open you up to a spiritual dimension, particularly if you feel stuck. Because there are people who just, particularly people who are depressed, I think, who are stuck in certain repetitive kinds of thinking. I think psilocybin has the potential to kind of break you out of that framework. It's a little bit of a small explosive, but again, I wouldn't take it on a regular basis. Adyashanti has said taking psychedelics is like raiding your treasure trove, by which he meant, I think, your kind of native endowment of spirituality, you're kind of forcefully entering it, you know,
Hmm.
like blowing a hole into it, you know, and that may be true, but for some people that can be helpful, at least once, you know. You know, it's something to consider. The book talks about psilocybin and LSD principally, and talks about the earlier research and recent research, and interesting book. And then he does some of his own. He also experiments with toad, which is another psychedelic from a toad that lives in the Sonoran Desert, probably not far from me here in Tucson. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Yeah. Anyone want to comment on that? No. Hmm. Yeah, when I was reading that book, I thought, yeah, you know, I can see that this could be helpful for some people, you know, and because some of the insights that people had were very beautiful and very profound and very helpful to them. So again, you know, we're talking about relieving suffering and being of benefit. This could be, you know, could be helpful for some people.
Hi, Stefan.
Yeah, Adam,
Yes. Yes. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were on one of my last hot songs too, right?
I was in the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I'm back again, and it was a really good talk today. Very relevant to my life experience. You know, coming from as a youngster, I kind of grew up kind of seeing the world, and I didn't see the purpose. Just didn't make sense to me. You know, it's like, well, what is everyone doing? They're all going for what? You know, I mean, I came from a pretty good home too, so it's not like I just didn't see the point. For that, I was kind of depressed. And then I found marijuana. When I smoked pot for the first time, it just opened me up. It's like, oh my God, the world became vivid. It became lucid. It became like a dream. It became very, so for that, I kind of fell in love with it there for a bit. Then, you know, the youngster got caught with it by my parents. My dad, being a pharmaceutical representative, knew a lot of doctors. So he took me to a doctor. They diagnosed me as depressed, put me on medication. And from there, it was all downhill, you know. And eventually I received the diagnosis of bipolar. So it was relevant to today's discussion. I've been kind of battling with that ever since then.
Right, light and dark, boy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so it's been tough. You know, the message that was received as a youngster was there's something wrong with you. Doctors were telling me you need to take this medication for the rest of your life. This is an incurable disease, of which I thought.
Do you take a medication for bipolar?
I don't. I haven't taken for about 10 years. You know,
Oh, good.
spiritual path of seeking herbs or seeking meditation or different techniques to try to work with the content to kind of, you know, achieve peace, really. You know?
Have you made progress with that? Have you managed to do okay without the medication?
I think so. Yeah, I think I've made quite a bit of improvement, but
Good.
there's still this general sense of fear of like I'm not being real, because I normally don't talk to people about this or tell people about it. It's almost like I'm hiding it,
Yeah.
hiding the darkness. I'm trying to make sure people don't find out about this, you know, because if they do, it could, you know, people could go, oh God, there's this big stigma with it. You know, there's this, oh, you know, we can't hire him as an employee, you know, or he might do this, or he might just feel that judgment almost. I'm just hiding it.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, you know, what do I need to open up more about it to people and not be afraid of what they might think? Or, you know, my whole thing is I hope to awaken, because if I awaken, I could really, you know, just shed the light on it and not have to worry, put it behind me and move on with my life. And that's
No, I think in terms of sharing it or not sharing it, I think you need to use discernment, you know. I think with some people you can share it. In some situations, it's probably not a good idea to share it.
Right.
There's no one way, I think, with that. I mean, clearly, in terms of work related, you probably don't want to let people know that you're, bipolar. But in terms of friends, why not? I think the stigma is coming off more as well-known people are being willing to acknowledge that they have bipolar as well. So
I think so. And it helps when people can open up about it and dialogue about what. So maybe that's what I hope that I could do at some point, but I'm still kind of scared, I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, another part is like, well, is that even me? This is an experience I'm having, but am I my experience?
Yeah, you're not bipolar. Your
Right.
fundamental nature is not bipolar. And if you can remember that and hang out there, but of course, bipolar, I think particularly, well, either depressive or manic phases, you can be pulled into, right? Identifying with the content, right?
Absolutely.
Hard to maintain that awareness in the midst of that, right? And that's what makes it bipolar as opposed to simply fluctuating moods, you get caught by it, right? So, I mean, I have worked with a number of people who have dealt with bipolar, and so I'm not unfamiliar with it.
Yeah. Were they able to heal from it? I mean, doctors say generally this is incurable. You're done for life.
Well, I think there are different levels of it, Some people have, really get caught. I mean, I actually have worked, there was a guy and I worked with in Scotland for quite a while who in his manic phases, he would believe that he was James Bond, he would go really, get into it and totally lost. He was hospitalized a number of times, but he also had some profound spiritual openings. And he seems to have, with medication, I believe, sort of gotten into a more stabilized place in which he's able to live more from the awakeness, So I think everyone's different. I think it's possible for sure.
Yeah, I actually had a shift in my consciousness back in 2012, in which I was really. There's been this battle with marijuana that seems to have been my. I go off of it, I go back to it, I go off of it. So it was during this phase where it's like I need to stop smoking. It's because when I smoke generally and start using it, I get no drive to do anything. It's like, okay, now I'm comfortable, now I'm numb. I don't want to do anything. And then it loses all my aspiration for living a higher life.
Yeah, I would say habitual uses of any substance like that is not recommended.
Yeah. And with me, it just something draws me in where I can't stop. My dad once told me, he said, I battle with him, he's from the pharmaceutical industry. And I was like, oh, it's natural. So we've always had this dialogue. And I eventually got him to believe that, marijuana can be a good thing, but it's just not for you. For you, it's not a good thing. And I can't disagree with you. For me, I lose myself.
I don't think it's a good thing for anyone for regular use. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it alters consciousness, and awakening is about clarity. It's about being with what is as it is. It's not going into some altered state. I think taking a drug, something like psilocybin once to reveal the deeper nature of existence can be helpful, but regular use of any substance, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, I think it just clouds awareness.
I agree. That's why I've been trying to do. So I've come to this point where it's like I'm done with it.
Yeah, I don't mean it's not a judgment. Of course, it's hard to stop. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because you get into states of stress and you just want to relieve that, and it's an instant.
Right.
So I'm looking for that relief without that.
That's right.
That's the awakening that I'm looking for.
That's right.
That I keep. But like I was trying to tell you, back in 2012, I had this, this battle. I was like, I'm done smoking, and so I went to bed in a deep depression. I woke up and I just floated out of bed. Everything changed, and that it's like something.
Well, can you connect with that on a regular basis?
I can't. I seem to have lost it. It was so long ago that, this had happened. And then I feel like I was still looking through it through a Christian lens. So I almost looked at everything's one, but I am the one. Nobody else is. Like it was almost very diluted. Like I'm Jesus.
Yeah.
Nobody else is, but I am.
There you go. There you go.
So it didn't
Oh,
take long. This fizzled. Yeah, it was destructive. Eventually, I blamed it on myself. Like, oh, here's this great gift that I received, and I ruined it. Is what it. So it took,
right. Not helpful. Not helpful.
no,
to
no.
blame yourself. No.
I guess there was nothing I could have done about it. I didn't have the framework. I wasn't on the spiritual path at that point.
I
It
see.
happened. I was like, whoa, what is this? And so I didn't really have. So I just,
Right.
my mind just took it and ran and said, my ego co-opted the whole operation, I suppose.
Of course, it always does. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're able to join us, Adam, and maybe you'll do more of these satsangs or consider the school at some point. As I think being on the path is really the key. So, I appreciate the willingness to, and the fact that you discovered this. I think it can be really helpful for you in working with the bipolar. But remember, you're not your bipolar.
Right.
It's not who you are.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this, Stephen.
Yeah, well, thank you, Adam. Great to have you join. Yeah.
Thank you. Namaste.
Yeah. Namaste. So we've come to the end of our time together. If there's any one last question, I'm happy to entertain it. Otherwise, we'll come to the end. It's lovely to see familiar faces like Nika and George, and of course Jim and Louise, and so yeah. Anyone else? Mauricio, I've seen you before as well, of course. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining. Again, School for Awakening begins again in January. Some of you are already signed up. Others of you might be interested. You can find more information on my website. And I'll be doing these satsangs in the new year, probably once every couple of months. It's sort of my plan. So just tune in and maybe you can join me again and have a beautiful day. Okay, namaste. Thank you.